Well, welcome everybody. We'll give you a few minutes here to log in and join us. Chuck and I have the mighty little disclaimer that we start off every one of these office hours with. Anyway, actually, Chuck and I were just talking. We just got back from a nice trip out to Seattle, Washington. The weather ended up being beautiful out there. It's pretty amazing, as a matter of fact. And Chuck, I don't know if I told you that the afternoon that I was down there, after you had left, I decided to go ahead and go over to the Space Needle. That was kind of cool. I've never been up in that thing before.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and all kinds of stuff over there.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's what we've got, folks. Just a little disclaimer to start things off as you're joining us. Just, please realize that we're here to help you tonight if we can. There may be some questions that are beyond us. And in that particular case, that's really where you may need to reach out to get some legal or tax advice or investment advice from a professional who does this all day long. So make sure that you seek that out when you need to. But tonight, let me stop sharing here. Chuck and I thought we would talk a little bit about college loans to start us off. We're already through that whole May the 1st decision day, and we're rolling forward. And hopefully all of you your students have made decisions, unless you're waiting out there for some colleges that are on the wait list. But we thought we'd give you at least some feedback on the loans. Some of you may or may not have heard that they just reset the federal student loans and parent loans. They were at 4.99% for the student loan. That's now at 7. Oh, it really got bad. It's at 5.5% moving forward for this next year. And then the parent loans went from 7.54% up to 8.05%. And as Chuck and I were talking about it, one of the things is understanding historically what that looks like. So Chuck, do you want to maybe share your screen and put that into perspective?
Yeah, let me see if I can get this shared. All right, share. All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
So this is from savingforcollege.com. It's really a great site that you guys can grab, information for anytime. But this one is just showing historical interest rates on the federal Stafford loans. So they used to be called Stafford loans. I think now they're just called federal direct loans. And you can see they have the subsidized and unsubsidized rates. And as you start to work backwards, it jumps pretty quickly. It wasn't that long ago they were over 5%. So, we get spoiled, and you have, I work in finance and we call it recency bias. You get used to what you have. But you can see here, it was over 5%, it dropped into between the 3 and 4%, but then was over 6% for, a good 5-6 years. If you go back even further, you can see they were up in the 8% in the late 1990s when I graduated from college. So, be thankful that we're still, under 6, and take that with a grain of salt as you're starting your borrowing.
Yeah, but it really is important to understand that. You and I were talking a few minutes ago about, when prime was at 0, it's no wonder that rates dropped as far down as they did. And we know we're not going to see that again for who knows, maybe not in our lifetime, but it's all the balancing act as far as what you're going to do at this point. So, because that's really the next stage of the game is, okay, you've gotten your kids into college, now what?
Yep. And just so everybody knows, it may seem kind of random, but that interest rate is based on a 10-year treasury because most of the student loans have a 10-year repayment plan or process. So it's based on a 10-year treasury plus a little kicker that they add in to make it financially viable for the government.
Yeah. And, and the other thing that you have to remember is that it's an annual changing rate, meaning, well, it's fixed for the loan that you take out, right? So when you take it out, like Chuck was just saying, it's fixed for that 10-year span of time. But then next year, when you take it out, it's a brand new interest rate, whatever is going at that time. So just something to keep in mind. By the way, we've got our first question tonight. Chuck, I'm going to let you take it. And then folks, feel free to put questions just like these other folks have into the Q&A section for us. We're happy to help you any way we can.
Yeah, so just back on the loans before we take this question, like Dan was saying, if you go to college for 4 years and take student loans each of the 4 years, you're very likely going to have a different rate on each of those 4 loans. And that's the first thing. And then keep in mind, when you fill out the FAFSA in October, you're essentially applying for a loan that you don't know what the rate's going to be until it's set in late May, middle of May or so. So just keep that in mind, and always consider that as you're borrowing. But we'll jump in and try and get to this first question. We did not submit FAFSA because we knew we would not be qualified for financial aid. Now I realize I cannot get non-subsidized loan because of it. Can our daughter who goes to college submit her own FAFSA without providing our info? So basically, if your student is a dependent student, it requires both parent and student information. There's no way around that. However, everybody who completes the FAFSA is eligible for the federal direct student loan. So those are use it or lose it loans, 5,500 freshman year, 6,500 sophomore, 7,500 junior and beyond as basic entry points. So again, your daughter wouldn't be able to do it on her own without your information unless she is an independent student based on the rules of independence.
Yeah, and let's talk about some of those rules. I mean, it's things like, your daughter would have to be married. She'd have to have a child, for example. She would have to be homeless, emancipated, be in the military, all those kinds of things. I mean, all things that you probably really don't want to have happen. Yep. But that's where they suddenly could become independent. And so
and they're actually cracking down on that as we go forward to next year. They've removed the emancipated part out of the equation. So now it's really going to be homeless, has a child. Those are going to be the biggest ones.
Yeah, so let's talk about that emancipated. That obviously came up because of some things that were going on in certain cities, which will go unnamed at this point, where there were advisors and lawyers who decided that they were going to help people try to skew their financial details and emancipate their child. And just so we're clear, what it means to emancipate is that you basically give your child to somebody else. I mean, you go to the courts and you kind of wash your hands of them and say, we're not going to provide any financial benefits for this child. And the whole purpose is to, get the student to qualify for need-based aid in that particular case. So it's nice to hear that they're closing that loophole down. That's good. Another question, my student won't qualify for need-based aid, I assume. Does the family's financial situation affect any discounting if it grants maybe merit aid? So merit aid is given to students whether you're qualified for need-based aid or not. There's no limitation to it. Merit, as you may need to know, is based on really 3 kinds of items. It could be academic merit aid, it could be talent, or it could be athletic. Those are the 3 primary ways that money is given out. And so in that particular case, you will indeed, if the student is getting those types of dollars, reduce the overall cost of school. So it's not going to have any impact on your ability to get need-based aid. And by the way, just Chuck already kind of mentioned this before, but don't forget that truly those loans, the student loans and the parent loans for that matter, can be given to anybody. I mean, even Bill Gates' kids could get those same loans if they needed them. So
yeah, the one thing I'll throw on here is I think there may be a hint is, do schools treat all aid differently if your financial situation is very strong? And there are some schools that are need aware, but I don't know that that's specifically what you're asking, but some schools may consider that while others won't, and you would need to check the individual websites if that's in line with what you were trying to discern there. All right, what else? What's next? What is the formula for a financial aid appeals letter? For example, explain my situation, then describe what I can afford to pay. Any other tips? So there's a couple things you need to consider here. basically, are you applying for need-based aid, which is derived from the cost of attendance minus EFC equals need? Or are you appealing for more merit-based aid based on your grades, test scores, something else? Each one is going to be different. You can appeal for one or the other, but probably not both. I mean, you can always try, but it may not be successful. Yes, you want to build a narrative around your situation, whatever that may be. You know, if you didn't get need-based aid and you think you might be able to, you know, did you have a change in income? Did you have medical expenses? Is there an expected change in income in the upcoming year? Those would be things that you would want to highlight in a need-based appeal. On a merit-based appeal, it would be, you know, if you use the MyCap software, did you get a smaller award than we projected? If so, we might want to look into that and see why. Did your student take their SAT or ACT test scores after you applied and improve them? Did they, you know, win some kind of academic award? Those are things you would want to include on a merit-based appeal. So it just kind of depends which one you're appealing for, and that's how you would want to address it. Dan, anything I leave out there?
Nope, you did great, Chuck.
All right, and I see a couple questions are coming in through the chat. Please make sure and throw those into the Q&A. We'll try and answer them if we can get to them, but move it from the chat to the Q&A would be a big help.
So the next question, we moved outside the United States 10 years ago, and my daughter has dual citizenship. We will complete the FAFSA as U.S. citizens. Will my daughter be considered a domestic or out-of-state student or an international student? Your daughter will be considered a U.S. citizen. So they'll qualify for the full benefits of, you know, the federal financial aid system, and, you know, and as well as any merit aid that the college may be offering, you know,
And
to her.
depending on why you've moved outside of the States, like for military service, you have a home state of record. Right. And so that may apply as well. If you've moved out for other reasons, I don't want to comment on it, but like I was a military brat, so we had a state of record.
Okay.
All right, so this one over here in the chat, I'll take a swing at it. My son is a rising senior. If he works a summer job, will that income work against us for the CSS profile? Is there an income protection allowance for the CSS profile? Yes. On the FAFSA, the income protection allowance got raised due to the FAFSA Simplification Act for the student. I want to say it's like 9,000. Does that ring a bell for you, Dan? The right
Yeah,
number?
that's right. That's exactly what it's doing. It's going up to about 9,000.
Yeah, so that's on the FAFSA. On the CSS, I don't know the answer actually.
Yeah, I will say this on the CSS profile, you have to remember that the colleges have an expectation anyway that your student's going to contribute about $2,400 to $2,500. So that's actually built into it, meaning if you didn't have any income, there's still an expectation that they're going to contribute around that $2,500 mark. So yeah, that's probably the best way to answer that question. You know, hey, having a summer job is fantastic. You know, just have them do it.
Yeah, I would always encourage to have the student work. It's typically not going to be the difference in being able to afford a school or not afford a school.
Perfect. Yeah. Next question. What are strategies to lower our EFC? Well, there's too many to possibly give to you. I mean, you have to know that when it comes to your EFC, there's 4 items that contribute to your, and by the way, let's all get used to something here. When it comes to the federal system, it's no longer EFC, it's your SAI, your Student Aid Index. So everybody say it with us right now, SAI, okay? It's your SAI. And so when it comes to that, the 4 items that contribute is mom and dad's adjusted gross income, mom and dad's non-retirement assets, the student's income, less the allowance, like Chuck was just saying, which is going up to about $9,000, and then the student's assets. Those are the 4 items that contribute to your SAI. And so the only way that you can reduce it is make less money, have less savings. I mean, those are 2 of the biggies. You have to know that there's some pretty significant changes that are coming moving forward when it comes to you being a business owner. So if you're a business owner, get ready, folks, because you have to now provide a value. In the past, it was that if you had to have, what was it, 100 employees or more to have to list it. Now it's any business, any value that has to be put down.
And, when it comes to strategies to lower your EFC, really it's going to depend also on the school and the method they're using. If your EFC is raised because you have high taxable assets, investments that you've saved, you could potentially pay down your mortgage at a FAFSA school that doesn't include home equity or something. There's different things you want to consider based on the school and the method and all those different things that go into it. So it's not just one strategy fits all, I think is what Dan was trying to say. All right, we have a comment. It says, we just wanted to share. We tried to appeal merit aid based on other college offers at Northeastern and Lehigh, but both were denied. Other offers were significantly higher from comparable schools. Yeah, that is going to happen sometimes. Every school is a case-by-case basis. Depends how they handle their appeals, and what you're appealing on, based on grades, test scores, different things like that. So I'm sorry those didn't work out, but it's good that you took a shot, right? Just remember, you don't get what you don't ask for 100% of the time.
Right. Yeah. And again, the challenge there is Northeastern's an amazing story, right? If you go back to the 80s, they had for a long time were predominantly a commuter college, okay? Meaning students didn't live on campus as much. But then in the 80s, the president of the university figured out the US News and World Report's formula and then started doing everything he could to increase the rankings of that school to where they're now in the top 100. And because of that, they've now become selective because of the volume of applications that they get. So it's amazing to think that a school has transformed in the last 25 years to what it is today. I guess it just shows you it can be done,
Yep. I think we'll see more of that as schools compete for certain types of students or certain programs continue to excel. I think things will change over time.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so my son will not qualify for need-based aid. If he has accepted early decision, can he turn down the acceptance based on financial reasons if the merit aid offer is not adequate for us? What is the timing of turning down an offer? Wondering if we have to commit to a decision before we know other schools' financial aid offers. Well, that's definitely a problem anytime you apply early decision, right? Like it's designed to be a binding commitment. And they all operate on their own calendars and time schedules, don't necessarily align to what families or students' needs are, right? It can be, a lot of moving parts, but you only get one to apply to anyway. You can always turn it down based on not being able to afford it, but that's really the only reason or only exception. So Dan,
Yeah,
anything to add there?
Well, I was just going to say, to that extent, that's exactly why you need to make sure that you use the MyCap software and run your numbers. You really need to know going in what we're projecting. And then if you want to do a double take on it, go to the colleges and try their net price calculators. Now get ready. Not all net price calculators are created equally. Some of them are just really cruddy, when it comes to the numbers that they provide. But you've got to know going in whether or not it's realistic, and then accept the fact that you lose leverage when you do that. When you apply early decision, you're really losing leverage because you're saying up front that we understand the financial risk, and we're still applying to this school, early decision. I'll also say that we're going to be in an unprecedented time this year because of the delay that's going to go on with the release of the new FAFSA. So you just got to get ready for that. October 1st is still going to be for the CSS profile, and the vast majority of these colleges that are early decision use the CSS profile as well as, the federal financial aid form. But you just got to be prepared for the fact that that might delay things even more than they usually are when it comes to these financial aid offers coming out.
And Dan did mention the delayed FAFSA, just so everybody knows, October 1st is the typical day. Because of the FAFSA Simplification Act, they're projecting December now. So that will be an issue.
And one other comment, they were asking about the timing of turning down an offer. As soon as you get a financial aid offer, you could go back and appeal it, of course, to the school. And then if they turn around and come back with an offer that doesn't work, then you can absolutely, as Chuck said, it's the one place that you can say no, that we're not going to come because we just can't afford it. But you have indeed potentially compromised yourself when it comes to the other schools. So that's why I really, really, really encourage you to run your numbers up front and make sure that you know what you're getting into. Because if you assume that you're going to get a big bucket of money and then they don't come through with it for whatever reason, you've got to have a backup plan. You've got to have other schools that your student loves just as much as their dream school.
And a lot of the most selective schools, right, aren't given a whole lot of merit aid. They're only given need-based aid. So keep that in mind as well. If it's a highly selective school, everybody who's going there is amazing. They don't give out that merit aid.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. I know it's not a quick answer, but can you direct how students can pay for grad schools? Financial aid calculated based on student situation or still based on parents' financial situation? Well, the thing I would tell you is if you know you're going to go to grad school, go to a less expensive undergrad and save that money for grad school. Getting financial aid for grad school is a different beast. You might have some luck if you have a fellowship or some kind of special research capabilities. But often, the financial aid, depending on your age and your dependent status, different things, as a graduate student becomes the graduate plus loan. Those are at higher rates. Yeah, so save your money for grad school and go to a less expensive undergrad is my best point of suggestion. Yeah,
and just so that we're on the same page on that, so the current rate on those grad plus loans is 6.54%. It's going to 7.05. And again, it's 100% depending upon your student. When your student gets to their master's or their doctorate programs and things like that, it has nothing to do with mom and dad's numbers anymore. However, I will share this. I can't remember the school. It was a medical school that I got a call out of the blue from a family on. And don't you know, they were asking for parent details, which I thought was totally wrong. But they were actually asking for mom and dad to provide some additional information. So pretty amazing, right? So tell you what, let's do something here. Let's I'm going to open up my MyCap account. And one of the things I think that would be really great for you all to know is that we do have some resources that are actually built into the platform when it comes to loans. And so it gives you the ability to get educated about those types of things. Because again, if you have used the software effectively, or anybody that's on here that's an advisor that's trying to use it effectively, you do have the the chance to be able to see pretty clearly what's going on. So here we go. And really what we're talking about is when we get down to, if you've used it to understand your federal, your institutional numbers, even currently the consensus, and then your budget, and then you've worked through the 1 year numbers, we give you this 4-year projection so that you've got a chance to understand, is this a good option for me? Will it possibly work, or a cautionary tale? And but then most importantly, down here at the bottom, if you turned around and if you uploaded your financial aid offers and then evaluated those offers, it of course helped walk you through whether or not it made sense for you to consider an appeal. But where I think this program gets really great is you got to take it to the next level. You've got to really work through what we're talking about today, which is how are you going to pay? In this particular case, how are you going to come up with this extra $20,000 that's the remaining funding gap here? Is that going to come from money that maybe the parents are going to throw in some extra money per month, or the students' assets are going to come in, or maybe the student's going to have to put money in, or Maybe you guys are having conversations with grandparents, aunts, or uncles. And then if that's still not enough, then it comes down to understanding the loans, both subsidized if you qualify for it, meaning it's a need-based loan, or that unsubsidized. Or you're gonna have to look at private loans, or the federal Parent Plus loans, or even some families in the past have looked at HELOCs. And actually HELOCs, we can talk about that for just a minute here, Chuck. They used to be very advantageous, didn't they? Because you could deduct the interest, as I recall.
Yeah, and it could potentially reduce your home equity in some cases.
Right. And here's the other thing too. You could often do those as, you controlled your payment. Let's put it that way. It wasn't like a fixed payment that you had to put in. So there were some pluses to it. Unfortunately, Congress about 5 or 6 years ago took away those benefits, which was that the interest was also deductible if it was used for college. And so that's now gone. It's only deductible if it's truly used to do some stuff on the house. But what I was talking about is, if I go back to kind of the dashboard here, if we go all the way to the bottom down here, you're going to see that there's all these different options as far as, talking about how to borrow. And we will be doing some webinars, by the way, through College Aid Pro in the coming weeks, as we continue to help you connect the dots on those things. But, what you need to know about the loans, and comparing the student loan programs that are out there, comparing private loans, and then, understanding the federal loan programs. It's truly all about understanding what you're getting into, and understanding kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. But we've definitely, because of this, tried to provide you with resources here that you can become educated, so that you know what those options are. Part of the reason that you want to know that is, just remember that just because a college says that you should take out a Parent Plus loan, may or may not make it the best option for you as a family, right, Chuck?
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those Parent Plus loans are very expensive, have high origination fees. Yeah, lots of variables for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just because they show you that the total cost is down to zero, just watch what they've done to package that together for you. So be careful.
Yeah.
All right. Other questions I see we've gotten? Maybe?
Yeah, looks like it.
Okay.
Here we go. We ran our net price calculator numbers, which are totally out of our budget. We are hoping that merit aid offered for my son's athletic achievements and ability will provide merit aid. However, since it would be athletically based, we can't project the potential amount of aid in advance. Have you heard of merit aid being significant in terms of perhaps 20 to 40,000 a year, or is that unrealistic? Well, I mean, there's way too many items to kind of address here. Certain schools, certain divisions don't give athletic scholarships. Certain sports don't give full rides. So, I think football and basketball are the only ones you can really count on 100% full ride for. So if it's a different sport, I'd be a little more concerned. The numbers you're talking to are relatively high. So it depends on the size of the school and how, what are they, a Power 5 conference, stuff like that. There's a lot of variables, but I think you need to dive in a little bit more about what schools you're considering, what divisions they're in, what sport he plays. If you had all that information, you might be able to schedule an hour with one of our College Aid pros, and they could probably give you a little more insight. But even then, there's still a lot of variables.
Yeah, athletic scholarships are hard, just in general. And look, here's another thing. You may be able to, with some of these colleges, get a pre-read. Now, what are we talking about? That's where you can go to the college and actually have them take a look at your financial situation and give you an idea of the kind of money that you may or may not receive. And I'm a big fan of that as a strategy, for sure. So that, again, you kind of go in with your eyes wide open. The other thing, though, that you need to know is, back to what Chuck was just saying, the dollar amounts can really, really vary from a little bit of money to, no money at all, to a little bit of money to, full tuition to a full ride, depending upon what things look like. So don't go in assuming that your son or daughter is going to get the big bucks for their athletic ability. Love to say that it was that way, but sometimes, I mean, especially with those sports, the coaches only have so much money to give away. And if they've got for example, a left-hander throwing 95 miles an hour, who do you think is going to get the money? I mean, it's going to be that kid over, somebody else that's playing in the outfield or whatever. So, Chuck, I'm going to
Nice.
let you take this one.
Yeah, I think you and I had a question about this not too long ago.
We
where we
did.
were working
Yeah.
together. So does a custodial UTMA that gets converted to a 529 become the asset of the student in the eyes of FAFSA and CSS, even though it is a converted 529? The age of majority does, at the age of majority, does that converted 529 become the students? So what I would say, and this is my understanding, I'd encourage you to both check legally, accounting wise, and with your college. But my understanding is it is an asset of the student, or excuse me, parent, but the student is still the beneficiary. And unlike other 529s, it cannot be changed. So if I just opened up a normal 529 and put my daughter on it and she didn't use that money, I could convert it to my son. If I had a UTMA and converted that to a 529 and that UTMA was in my daughter's name, I could no longer change that beneficiary to my son if she didn't spend it all. Does that make sense? But I would encourage you to get a double check on that opinion. But we've looked into it a little bit, and that's my understanding.
Yeah, it's good, Chuck. Hello, I have a Common App question for Dan. Is there a way to send one version of the personal statement to certain schools and a different version to another school, which do not have, or my son's applying to some schools which do not have supplemental essays, and he wants to personalize his essay for those schools. So the answer is yes. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. You just have to be careful to not make the mistake of accidentally have your son send the wrong essay to the wrong school. So, be very, very, very careful about that. If a school gets something that's, designated some other school, then it's going to go in the garbage can. Okay. You're not going to get any points off of that. So just be very, very careful. But yeah, you can. It's just a matter of pulling the essay out and putting the new one in, and making that happen.
All right. Would we be able to ask a school for a pre-read prior to applying to a school or after? Can you share more on how a pre-read works? Dan may have a different opinion on how he would do this, but my take would be I would simply call the admissions department or the financial aid department, and without giving my name or my son's name or giving away too many details, just start to ask questions that are relevant. My son is a very good baseball player. We suspect he might get a baseball scholarship. What would be the maximum he can get? If he gets that baseball scholarship, does it prohibit or include him in any other pools of money? And that's how I would start and go about it. Just, the incognito mode of not telling who I am or who my son is, and asking those broad questions. Dan, you got a different opinion or anything different that you would do?
Well, if you're pretty confident that your student is going to apply to a school too, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to the financial aid office and just have them run some numbers for you. Some of these schools indeed do have like a form that you can fill out. A college that comes to mind for me is right here in Kentucky. It's called Center College. And Center has a preliminary financial aid assessment that they'll do, to try to help guide you as far as what that could be. The bottom line is, because by the way, I've referred to what Chuck's talking about all the time is the Columbo technique, kind of throw your trench coat in, and you slip in there and you get the information, and you get the heck out. But anything you can do to get an idea of what the offer might be and what things might look like ahead of time is going to help you versus waiting around and then getting the shock and all that comes in the spring of the senior year, because you just didn't know what you didn't know. You didn't know how the school operated. You didn't know, back to what Chuck had said earlier, whether the schools need aware, when it comes to making their admissions decisions. And again, part of the deal too is the coach going to be out there, pulling for your student, right? I mean, they've got to be the biggest cheerleader saying, I want this guy on my team or this gal on my team. What do we have to do to make it happen? And what we might have to do to make it happen is find some merit money, because remember, it could be that maybe they don't even offer any athletic scholarships. If that's the case, then we got to find some other money, and it's got to come from the academics or the talent, to be able to make that work. So.
I had a couple clients come in late this year where they could play their sport, which happened to be football, at some schools, um, or they could go to schools where they couldn't play and get more academic money. So, it was a tough decision. And, you know, are you, if you get accepted to a school, is that going to be a school where the coach wants you to play versus, vice versa? So there is a lot of risk in that. Hopefully you'll get recruited heavily across the country. I know I wanted to play in college, and I tried 2 sports and it didn't work out. So I hope it goes well for you. I mistyped. Yes, I meant to say, is the asset of the students. Sorry, that's what I believe you said. Yeah. Yes. So if it's a UTMA, it does not remain the asset of the student. It becomes a parent asset, but the beneficiary is the student, and it cannot be changed. So it's my understanding that it will be assessed at the parent rate, but you cannot change that beneficiary. So I hope that clarifies it. Did I say that clearly, Dan?
Yeah, that sounds right to me too.
Yeah, so
it's that
it is
whole UTMA UGMA thing that really throws it over.
Yeah, a parent asset, but it is for the beneficiary of the child that the UTMA belonged to, and the beneficiary cannot be changed like other 529s.
Yeah. All right. So next question. On prior cap calls, I learned about the appeals process for financial aid, but how does it work after the freshman year? For example, if the school topped off your financial aid offer for the freshman year after the appeal, then how does it work the other years? Because I'm guessing the student doesn't have any leverage since they're already a student there, right? You're correct. You lost the leverage, but the question is, you have to remember that every single year's financial aid offer is based on the facts at that time. It's going to be based on the income and the assets. And in fact, let's not forget, it's based on the income from 2 years prior, and it's going to be based on the value of assets on the day that you submit the forms. And so, if you understand that, then that means that it's very possible that your financial aid offer can change from year to year. It really can. It's kind of a moving target. So, just keep that in mind, that could be something that you've got to deal with. Okay, I've lost Chuck. I'm sure he'll join us back here in just a second. Next question is legally separated parents. According to the new FAFSA changes, will colleges still consider us as married unless we get legally divorced? I'm talking about California, where legally separated parents still consider married. Weird. Wow. I don't, you know what? That's an interesting question, because my understanding is that you can be both legally separated and or legally divorced, and either way it's considered to work. The one exception to that is that I've seen it before where parents are separated, but they make the mistake of continuing to live in the same house. And by the way, I could understand how that could happen in some place like California because of that, the overall housing expenses and things like that are associated with it. Okay. With having 2 separate households. But the point is, you have to be living in separate entities. Ideally, there's been enough time, if you can, that you're filing separate tax returns, those kinds of things. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this whole thing, folks. I'm not going to lie to you. The changes were made intentionally to try to get rid of the gray area that exists. And the gray area that has existed in the past. All right, Chuck's back. All right, good news. But the gray area that exists when it comes to this whole thing on divorce in the past has been the parent with whom the student lives at least 51% of the time. Well, if I've got one parent that's making $650,000 and another one that's making $65,000, it kind of created a moral hazard, meaning that, of course, the one that they're at $65,000 is going to be the one the kid lives with 51% of the time. So they've tried to eliminate that by saying, no, it's the parent who provides the most financial benefit. And so think about that. That's going to be child support. That's going to be other maybe medical expenses that you're covering. I mean, it's that whole process that's going on, but it's still going to be very interesting to see how they police that. And our understanding is that if you're a parent, if the parents get along and they literally split everything, to the penny down the middle, that then it's going to become the parent who has the highest income. And I'm not sure how they're going to figure that out or police that. I mean, I guess they could look at the adjusted gross income, but just something to keep in mind. Okay. Let's see, Chuck, you want to take that last one down there?
I cannot. Oh, wait, no, I don't have any questions listed in my Q&A.
Oh,
So
okay. Well,
I
I'm
don't.
just glad you're
Oh,
back. Let me read it
well,
to
I
you.
just got one. So
Oh,
is this the
go.
one you're referring to? I met a
No, that's okay.
soccer
Go ahead and
athlete.
take that one, and I'll take the one before it.
Okay. I met a soccer athlete recruit who told me that it worked out that it's cheaper for him to go to Division III private school than a Division I state school with scholarship. How come? Yeah, I mean, it just depends how schools give their aid. There's not enough information here for us to necessarily be able to answer this specific case, but schools operate on their own, business models, and soccer is probably not a full scholarship sport in Division I, so he's probably splitting that with other players on the team. And at Division III, they were able to give him either merit-based aid or need-based aid that covered more. So I don't think that's necessarily uncommon outside of football and basketball. But without more details, I wouldn't be able to answer more specifically.
Yeah, that's good. So the question here is it true the FAFSA is opening later this year? Yes, it is. So in the past, both the FAFSA and the CSS profile have opened on October the 1st. And this year, because of the new FAFSA Simplification Act, which is impacting, of course, the programming, the whole platform that it's on, it's not going to roll out until sometime in December. Now, think about that for a minute. For those of you, for example, and this was going back to the question I was talking about early decision. For those of you that are applying early action or early decision, and we're hoping to have financial aid offers in, much earlier because of that, there's likely going to be a delay. You have to remember that there's only 200 colleges and institutions out there that use the CSS profile, which is the more selective colleges predominantly. And the reason they're doing that is because they're using that for their own institutional aid in many cases. But so what we're talking about there, though, is, they're going to process their stuff, but then you've got all these other thousands of other colleges that are FAFSA only schools. And so it's just one of those things that we're just going to have to see how this all shakes out this year. It's going to be really, really interesting.
All right. Can merit aid be reduced if a student's residency status switches from out of state to in-state based on parents moving during their sophomore year? So I think there's a lot of variables to this one. I would just encourage you to reach out to the school directly and ask a question on that topic. I've seen schools where, they have very specific statements regarding residency and when it can change and when it doesn't change. So in a case like this, your best bet is to just reach out to the school directly.
Perfect. Yeah. Hey, folks, again, just do us a favor, make sure that you put the questions into the Q&A for us. There's one that says, when do we learn about aid and how long we have to accept the offer? So when it comes to when you learn about aid, that's 100% driven by the colleges. Again, remember, there's going to be a delay this year, which means there's going to be a lot of financial aid offers that come out even later than they usually do. But traditionally, you're going to see financial aid offers that come out, in the February, March timeframe, sometimes earlier than that, especially for colleges that are trying to lock in their incoming freshman class. They'll really get to those types of things much quicker. And then you've got the ability to accept or decline the offer all the way up until when your student makes their final college decision. Traditionally, that's been May the 1st. And I say traditionally because it's no longer a mandated national date, but it is often a situation, again, where folks do indeed still try to make that decision by May the 1st. And one of the ways that they're incentivized to do that is the colleges will say, hey, to lock in that particular scholarship that we've offered you, we expect to hear from you by May the 1st. Now, you do have the ability with some colleges to go back to them and ask for an extension that they may be willing to, to give you so that you can wait for those other decisions to come through. But again, that's kind of the time frame that we're looking at. Okay. Any other questions, comments, emotional outbursts tonight from anybody?
Funny, IRS allowed us to select legally separated status on tax file, but FAFSA won't.
Yeah,
2 cents.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
There's a lot of things that don't line up with IRS and FAFSA. They don't follow the same set of rules. It doesn't matter who claims a child as a dependent. That doesn't matter.
Yeah, you and I've talked about that a lot, Chuck, and we get that question asked a bunch, don't we? Because folks think that, hey, that's the easiest way to decide who's going to actually be and what we're talking about is who's considered the custodial parent when it comes to the financial aid forms. And just so we're clear on that, by the way, whatever you do not make the mistake of doing one parent as the custodial parent on the FAFSA, and then doing a different parent as the custodial parent on the CSS profile. That will crash and burn on you because the colleges are going to, they're going to compare and contrast the numbers and they're going to see that there's an issue there. So.
When will you be discussing the best way to pay for college? I heard you may have some sessions. Those will probably get scheduled in the next 2 weeks, don't you think, Dan?
Yeah, they are definitely coming up. You're going to definitely want to, make sure that you see those. We just came off of such a busy season when it came to the appeals process. I mean, just lots and lots of presentations that were going on. And we also have, plenty of schools that are out there that are also having us do, webinars for their student body. But the next thing we're going to be flowing into will definitely be the paying for college. So stay tuned. Make sure that when you see those, that you have an opportunity to get on there and participate in that. And there will be more than one. I'm confident that we'll be having, but it's the next biggest thing that you've got to worry about. Let's see. If the parents live and work in 2 different states, how will state school decide on students' residency? It's going to come back down to the custodial parent again. Who does the student live with in that particular case? So, just keep that in mind. And this does happen, by the way, of course, parents are divorced, they live in opposite states. I mean, in my area where I live, I'm in the tri-state area. So I've got Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio all bunched together here. And that's a possibility where somebody could live on different sides. What's interesting about that, though, is it gets down to then some planning, conversations about how are you going to handle that? And, how do you make sure that if you can anyway, that the student is going to a school where you're going to be able to get the in-state tuition instead of the out-of-state tuition cost associated with that. And sometimes, you may discover that the school has some additional requirements and hoops that you have to jump through to prove that. So just make sure that you do your homework.
So if the FAFSA won't be available until sometime in December and college's ED submission deadline is 11/1, we will have to apply without FAFSA data. I'm thinking of a couple colleges say the ED notification date is end of December. Yeah, so you'll have to do your application separate from your financial aid and sort that out kind of as it becomes available. I know I've said it before. I think December is optimistic, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's a little bit later. I hope not. That just creates havoc and headaches for families, students, colleges. But anytime, the government, Department of Education is involved, you never know what's going to happen. So, yeah, they are going to be basically mutually exclusive to a large extent this year is how I would frame it.
Yeah, listen, this whole thing's not only freaking parents out, but it's really stressing the colleges out, because knowing that this is going to be delayed is really going to create a train wreck. Because here's the thing, and you know what, Chuck, I guarantee we've both run into this, but we've dealt with families before that have hopped on the FAFSA. They say, I'll show them I'm going to get this done just as soon as it goes to 12:01, in the morning of the day that it opens up. And sure enough, later on that evening or even the next day, the system crashes.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm confident that's the same thing that's going to happen, because families are going to be freaking out about the fact that, the software is going to be delayed so much, and these colleges, it's going to be that whole desire. We got to get this done, got to get this done. So I'm just going to tell you, take a deep breath and just understand that when we get there, that it's okay to wait a little bit of time to get those things done. You're just going to have to, because if not, you're going to be dealing with a lot of angst and stress and, stuff that's going on for something that you can't control. And the colleges can't control it either. So just be careful about that.
Yep.
Question is, can we use our valedictorian hour to have someone look over our kids' activities section of the Common App and possibly review their essay? And the answer is yes, you absolutely can. Right now, there's 2 of us that do that type of stuff, maybe 3 of us, that, you could schedule that meeting so that we could look at those with you. That would be me, Dan, Brian, and then also Melissa. We've got the ability to do that because we do a lot of admissions work with our families. Additional time, can you also purchase additional time to discuss financial issues? You can indeed. The way it works, and in fact, this is a good segue to say this. Don't forget that if you decide to do any kind of upgrades on the software, if you happen to have the free platform, or if, for that matter, if you're going to do something where you want to book an hour, you can use a discount code of OH15. That's O is in office, H is in hours, 15, the number 15, all together, OH15. And that'll give you a 15% discount off of that purchase. But what that means is this. If you then buy that extra hour in the future, it's $299 less that 15% discount, which means it drops it to $254.15 just for that 1 hour. So please keep that in mind.
All right. Is the FAFSA application submitted every year during the 4 years a student is in college? Yes. So the FAFSA is designed to determine need-based aid. Again, it's based on a formula, cost of attendance minus EFC, which will become SAI equals need. And your financial situation can change year to year. Maybe you get a huge raise, maybe you get laid off. As that changes, it can impact your need-based aid each year. So yes, you'll want to make sure you're completing that each year your student is in college.
So this next one, this is something, I mean, it's a common thing, and we feel your pain. I used your estimated calculator, and my kid's dream school will probably cost $45,000 at this point. Too much more than we can afford. Should we just forget about this school? Thanks. Well, I'll be the first one to say that you definitely at this point, I mean, first, kudos to you for running it, because it's better to know that number now than it is for you to wait again until you suddenly have these numbers flow in the spring of the senior year. Don't forget that one of the great things about the software is there's the advanced search tool where you can actually go in and you can plug in some specifics. Now, I'm going to be very clear with this. Don't hop in and immediately select every single category, because if you do, it'll likely, show you no options. So kind of build it piece by piece. So maybe you go in, and what you do is you decide to go with like a 4-year institution. And then you're also going to select the one that's show me automatic scholarships, or colleges that offer automatic scholarships only, that type of thing. By doing that, you can really come up with another list of schools that maybe will fit your family budget better and really put you in a much better position. And then most importantly, for you to be able to do it. If that dream school is still there, that's a personal call as far as what you're going to do there. You know what your family can afford, and and definitely do that based on what that magic number is.
Yeah, and I'll throw one thing in. Actually, I'm going to share my screen. Do you mind, Dan?
Go for it.
We've only got about 6 minutes, but I'll try and do it pretty quick. All right. So, like, if your student is a junior now, about to become a senior, I would encourage you, this is the University of Alabama, and you might come out with a net cost. But if you dig into the financial aid and scroll down to the scholarships, you can see here that they have their scores and GPA. So let's just say you got, let's say right now your student has, I don't know, a 1330 and a 3.0 GPA. They may only be eligible for $8,000. But if you can get that 1330 up to 1360 or 1420, now it's 11,000 or 14,000. So I would say never rule it out without at least digging into the scholarships, seeing if any of them are automatic, what kind of improvement in grades or test scores your student might need, to get that extra money that might make it feasible. Now, obviously, that doesn't apply to every school, but you want to make sure that you're not ruling out something that might be achievable.
And that's such a great point, Chuck, because truly what you're doing is you're trying to incentivize your student to, do the extra studies to maybe be able to bring that up. And then, part of that too is just making sure that you're also doing the research into how the colleges approach both test optional, and test required, depending upon what they're doing there. But yeah, that's just a great strategy. Okay, when applying for the FAFSA, we use taxes 2 years prior. That's correct. If financial income changed in between, what happens? So that's where you're looking at possibly doing an appeal. And by the way, changing to, if it went down, you definitely are going to appeal. You're going to go back and have that conversation with them to help them understand where things are today. This is a very common thing that comes up when it comes to appealing financial aid offers is, maybe you had a windfall of money 2 years ago that, didn't carry over. Or maybe one parent is currently unemployed or something like that. Those are definitely reasons for having an open conversation with the financial aid officers about where you are today, because that's truly the unfortunate part about using a tax return from 2 years before. They're assuming that everything's the same. And so don't be afraid to bring up to these financial aid officers where you are today, and then be prepared to provide the documentation to prove it, because they're going to expect to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say provide as little information as possible, and be prepared to pack up and support everything you do.
Yeah. Right.
I'm glad that was helpful. Yeah, please make sure and dive all the way into the software, both on the affordability aspect of putting in, your financial information, but also digging into the scholarships and the academic information that it offers. You never know where you might find that hidden jewel, or, incentivize your student to really get in there and work hard to achieve something. So I'm glad that was helpful.
You know what, Chuck, do one more thing since we got a couple of minutes here. Hop in there one more time and show the advanced search, if you would.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right, so we're going to go back out and we're going to go to search for schools, scroll down for advanced search. So in my case, I'm going to say I want any distance, because unlike the East Coast, if I set a 200-mile radius of Houston, Texas, I get about 4 choices. So I'm going to leave that any distance. But I'm going to say I want a big school. I want it to be 4 years, and I want it to be ranked. And then I'm going to search for schools. And this is just a mock account I set up for my daughter. So you can kind of see what starts to come up. No funding gaps. I wouldn't, in theory, have to borrow to attend there. What else should I be showing here, Dan?
Well, actually, go in there one more time. And this
Okay.
time down at the very bottom, select only search for colleges that are going to give scholarships.
Okay.
So we'll have to go back and just refill her out there. Yeah.
So any scholarship. Yeah.
No. Automatic scholarships.
Oh, automatic. Sorry. Okay.
That's all right. Yeah.
Yep. So then you get a whole bunch of them that will give you automatic scholarships that, will tell you exactly where it comes. I wonder if I can get to where there is a funding gap. But as you can see, Peru State, hey, school up in Nebraska where I went. It's a great school, very inexpensive. Okay, so now we're getting to some of the funding gaps. But if all you have to come up with is $5,000 to attend a university, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. Okay, I'm going to do one last thing here. Somebody was just asking about the ability to get coaching. And so I want to kind of walk this through for just a second here. It'll show you the upgrade options. And then we're going to close it out for the night, okay? So when it comes to the software, you've got 3 different levels of being able to use the MyCap software. The first is the free, which is up to 3 colleges, and there's no cost for doing that. Then there's the MyCap Scholar level. The MyCap Scholar means that you've got access to all the colleges in the database. That's $149 per year, less your 15% discount, puts it at $126.65. But again, that's just the software. Where you get the opportunity to have some coaching is with the valedictorian. If you do the valedictorian, you get the software for an entire year, and you get a 1-hour consultation with one of our CAP experts. And again, that could be on anything. If you want some help in the future with your FAFSA or your CSS profile, or with the appeals process, or how to pay your college bill for 4 years, or even the loans, or as was asked earlier, if you want some help with applications or essays or any of those kinds of things, whatever we can squeeze into an hour can be done to help you with that part of the process. And so that's $299. It's kind of a no-brainer because of the fact that you're getting the software and that 1 hour that you can use at any time over any period of time in the future. So hope that helps to answer your question. Chuck, you got anything else tonight?
I can't think of anything. Thanks for joining us. I love the questions. Sorry if I don't answer them as exactly as you hoped, but we do the best we can. And I really enjoy this for both your questions and my time with Dan. So great to see everybody, and keep coming back.
Yeah, folks, thank you so much for joining us again. We'll be back in 2 weeks where we will jump into this again. And don't forget to keep your eyes and ears open for those webinar opportunities that I promise you will be coming out soon on how to pay your, the college cost. But thanks for joining us. Everybody have a great evening. Take care.
Have a great one.